Hello and welcome. I am Ellie Richardson and you are watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. At least 35 people have been killed after gunmen raided Woro, a remote village in the Kwara state, authorities say. Residents describe it as the deadliest attack in the area this year. A second round of peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by the United States, has begun in the United Arab Emirates. Ukraine's lead negotiator announced. The head of the Ukrainian delegation, Rustem Umerov, wrote on social media, adding Kyiv's team was seeking to achieve a just and lasting peace. The US military shot down an Iranian drone after it aggressively approached the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Washington says talks with Iran remain scheduled this week despite the incident. Former US President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton agreed to testify in the congressional investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, allowing them to avoid being found contempt of Congress. Former UK Cabinet Minister Peter Mandelson has quit the House of Lords after leaked emails tied him to Jeffrey Epstein, while British police have opened a criminal probe into alleged misconduct in public office. White House confirms India's $500 billion US investment plan. US Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt makes a statement. US President Donald Trump signed a roughly $1.2 trillion funding bill, ending a short federal shutdown after a 217 to a 214 House vote. Amid restrictions at Rafah, at least 10 Palestinians, including children, killed in Israeli attack across Gaza since early this morning, as per reports. And for your top story this hour, Bill Gates has described his past association with Jeffrey Epstein as a huge mistake in an interview, reiterating that he was foolish to spend any time with him. Gates has denied more recent allegations found in unsealed Epstein files as absolutely absurd and completely false, maintaining that his interactions were limited to discussing philanthropy. The US Department of Justice released over 3 million pages of investigative files in the Epstein case. According to reports, these include unverified 2013 emails written by Epstein, though possibly never sent. Allegations that Gates contradicted a sexually transmitted infection from Russian girls and sought to superficially give antibiotics to his then wife, Melinda French Gates. We are now being joined by Mark Sutherland, who's a geopolitical commentator, joining us from London. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Does Bill Gates' admission that he was foolish go far enough in addressing public concerns about powerful figures associating with known offenders?
Good to be with you. Thank you. The concern is this is for the average citizen in the world who is fully awake to the appalling behaviour of Epstein. The key is this: is that those people who are extremely wealthy beyond our wildest dreams, beyond the things we can even imagine, are also in extremely powerful positions. We are then being exposed to how they think these people then think they can get away with things, and they have an attitude, frankly, that they are then above the law. And respectfully, the fact is that people know a lot of information. They are fully aware, I believe, of what has gone on, and a load of this is unfolding now, as you've just read in the headlines, the ramifications here in the UK in regard to people like Mandelson, but of course with Bill Gates, who I have to say I am no friends with for a variety of different reasons, and in regard to his behaviour. But the thing is, Ellie, I'll just underline this, is that some of these people who think that they are extremely powerful and extremely wealthy think that they are above the law, and that they can then mix and get up to things that are deeply, deeply questionable. And all of the, personally, if we can, all of these people need to be held to account. Maybe that's with some, that's about to begin. Ellie.
How should public accountability differ when influential individuals like Bill Gates has said claim their interactions were for filling a trophy, but they occur after serious criminal convictions?
Ellie, I mean, again, you raise a very, very important question. And when you were reading the headlines, you note, the Clintons they're going to go before Congress and testify. We all wait with bated breath to see what they will then say. These people, particularly with them, there's a long track record. And as someone has already commented today, when we look back over the last 30 years, and some of us are that old, we then come to the conclusion that it seems that people have got away with so much, and they don't seem to be held accountable. And that is then the concern. And with events unfolding here in the UK, Ellie, there is going to be a number of people that wait with bated breath, because we want that accountability, and that, as I say, that may happen. You ask a very important question, e.g., if people are then taken to court, can we then trust the legal system to then find these people guilty if the information has come up to say that they are guilty? Will people be given that, or will things be then covered up again? The problem is there is a track record at times, in my own humble opinion, that it seems to say, is there a collusion all the way to the top that is deeply worrying, Ellie. Thank you.
And as we've seen with all these files drop, and there are many victims also, do these renewed revelations from the Epstein files risk shifting the focus away from the victims and towards reputational damage for these high-profile figures? Do you think it's just saying, oh, this person was in the files, but just completely ignoring the fact that why there are these files in the first place?
Ali, again, you raise a very good question, because we must not forget the victims and what many young women have actually suffered in these circumstances. And it also seems, I was saying this on my behalf, that seeing it in other people quoting on other news channels, when we say, well, we must not forget the victims, it seems a bit trite. You are not saying that tritely. It's so important that we do, and we must not. And to be fair, let's just say this: there's been a big independent grooming gang investigation here in the UK, led by Rupert Lowe, that started on Monday, and we could end up saying that all this kind of stuff overshadows even the importance of that investigation as well. We know how the news cycle works. We know when people want to push stories to then get other stories out of the media headlines, and frankly, it's an extremely, on the one hand, it seems easy, but it's also an extremely nefarious and complex, industrial complex, media-wise, that we are then dealing with. But you are absolutely right to say that the victims must never ever be forgotten, and especially when we're looking at people like Virginia Giuffre and what sadly what happened to her, and then there are. With her, and like many others, there are some very, very deep questions that people want answers, and we want the truth instead of The problem is that then people go down, I can understand it, go down a conspiracy line, but we actually want the truth and we want this to be verified. On independent media, there are a number of girls that have come forward for a long time who are speaking out, and their voices need to be heard, Ellie.
Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us here on NewsX World. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
A second round of US-brokered peace talks between Ukraine and Russia has begun in Abu Dhabi. Ukrainian negotiator Rustem Umerov confirmed the start of the two-day trilateral meetings, which aims to advance efforts to end Europe's largest conflict since World War II. The discussions focus on sensitive issues such as Russia's demand for Ukraine to cede land, particularly in the Donetsk region, and the fate of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which remains under Russian occupation. Despite the US pushing both sides to find common ground, major differences remain, with Ukraine rejecting any territorial concessions. The ongoing conflict, which began after Russia's 2022 invasion, continues to fuel tensions as Moscow controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory. We are now being joined by Colin Chong-Yu-Keat, who is a Foreign Affairs and Secretary in Strategy Analysis, joining us from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Now, as we saw, what are the key obstacles that are most likely to shape the outcome of these peace talks, such as territorial disputes, security guarantees, or prisoner exchanges, and can they realistically be bridged?
Well, we have seen the two major sticking points now. The first would be, of course, the status of territories on the recognition by both sides. So this remains the central sticking point. Russia is demanding the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from occupied areas, notably from parts of Donetsk, and also the wider recognition of territorial transfers to Moscow. And we have known that Ukraine is pressing firm on the need not to cede any kind of sovereignty and control to Russia. Of course, also Kyiv is pressing to freeze the conflict on current front lines, and of course rejecting any unilateral pullbacks that will undercut its own sovereignty and national interests. And of course, with regards to the security guarantees of Ukraine, we have seen how Kyiv has been adamant in getting tangible and needed long-term security guarantees from both, of course, the US and NATO, and we have seen how also Russia is against any future participation of Ukraine in NATO. So despite this diplomatic push and forth, we have seen how both sides would not want to concede, and Russia is negotiating from a point of strength. It is gaining more leverage now in terms of recent momentum for the past couple of weeks now on the strikes on Ukraine, and there's this also deep mistrust and distrust, and Kyiv has been accusing Moscow of lacking seriousness about any kind of negotiations in the first place. Amidst this new push by Moscow in targeting the energy infrastructure of Ukraine, especially during winter. And we have seen also public opinion in Ukraine is still strong in terms of opposing any kind of territorial concessions to Russia. And this remains the main blockade and roadblock towards any substantive or credible outcome from these negotiations. And this is where President Trump has been saying that he has been sad to see that those kind of stumbling blocks that still remain. But Russia still has the leverage, and he has stated that he will continue the war for as long as it takes. What it still calls as a special military option on Ukraine. Then Ukraine is lacking the needed long-term push now, and the defense and security support and arms support, not only from Europe but also especially from Washington. If this goes on and if this drags on, of course, President Trump has warned both sides that this would not be on good terms for both sides, and we have to remember that President Trump's term will end soon for the next for the next 3 years now, and it remains to be seen how Ukraine will still have the needed credible security and arms support from the US, and this Russia is negotiating from a higher leverage now, and for now it sees no certain or credible immediate returns from an immediate cessation of conflict, because it still has the major resources to carry on, unlike the position of Ukraine now. So of course, this is again, we've seen how this will further drag on a contract on a protracted basis, and President Trump was right to ensure that this ends now. But for this talk in Abu Dhabi, I simply don't see any credible outcomes apart from these areas of low sensitivity in terms of providing these confidence-building measures for both sides. Ellie.
And can these US talks in Abu Dhabi succeed without any significant shift in battlefield realities, or is an agreed ceasefire necessary before any real negotiations take place?
Well, Moscow is sensing the apparent weaknesses of Kiev in terms of getting the needed support from both Europe and the US now, and hence we have seen how he has gained the confidence and the strength, and negotiating from a position of higher leverage, and we have seen how in parallel they are still going all out, and especially for Moscow, it still has the long-term sustaining capacity of maintaining this conflict, and the same cannot be said for Ukraine, because we have seen how this uncertainties and volatility in terms of this support system, with regards to also concurrent conflicts throughout the world, and also in regards to tensions in transatlantic ties. And of course, even if no breakthrough is reached in this round of talks, of course, our positive indication will be that hopefully it may reduce also escalation risks and to lay groundwork for future frameworks. But I don't see any credible or initial agreements on these sensitive territorial issues, and that and Russia has Russia still has the time to prolong this, and of course you force Ukraine to toe the line and to be aligned to the wants and demands of Moscow with regards to the territorial issues. And if Ukraine is not wanting to do that, whether from Zelensky or whether from the public opposition in Ukraine, Russia will use that as a pretext to accuse Ukraine of stalling the whole agreement and negotiations, and still has all the time in the world and capacity to continue to drag this war. So we've seen, this is to the disadvantage of Ukraine, and of course the importance of the involvement of the US to continue to be the mediator and to push both sides, and to hold the one party to be accountable for dragging the whole process along, whether it's Moscow, whether it's Kiev. Only Washington has the pressure and power to do that, and we hope that it will continue for the next round.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will come back to you in just a moment. The Kremlin has reiterated that Russia's offensive in Ukraine will continue until Kyiv agrees to Moscow's terms, as US-mediated talks begin in Abu Dhabi. Speaking to reporters, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that until the Kyiv regime makes the appropriate decisions, the special military operation continues, using Russia's term for the nearly 4-year conflict. The talks in Abu Dhabi come amid ongoing international pressure for a negotiated settlement. Both sides have signalled cautious optimism, but deep divisions remain over territorial control, security guarantees, and the future of eastern Ukraine. We are now being joined back again by Collins Chong-Yu-Keat. Thank you so much for joining us back here again. What are the implications of Russia's public stance that the war will not end until Ukraine accepts Moscow's terms? And how does this affect the credibility of ongoing peace negotiations?
Well, we have seen how Moscow is cognizant of the persistent war fatigue now affecting Ukraine and Europe, and of course also the US. And this statement is also a signal to shape expectations, and especially expectations of Washington. The point of this public line is to narrow this landing zone before the hardening of this bargaining capacity. And of course, we have seen how, it simply says that if you don't sell us a compromise, then and you basically sell Kyiv on our terms. And of course, also this, again, he has the position and capacity to say that now and to do that now with this sustaining war capacity. And we have seen how Ukraine has been pushed back further for the past couple of months now. It's also a hedge against appearing weak in entering the talks. And we have seen how this for the past couple of days now, the sustaining attacks on Ukraine has increased Moscow. And of course, also it's also part of the attempts to split the peace camp coalitions. It's a maximalist framing pressure. On one side, we have seen how Ukraine's partners who have been wanting for rapid de-escalation, and also on the other side, who has been cautious and who has been adamant in ensuring that the national sovereignty of Ukraine, especially with regards to the territories involved, will be the ultimate red lines, and also in galvanizing, also seeing how the public mood in Ukraine, by giving this ultimate choice, whether to have concessions in terms of the territories, or to see that Ukraine will continue to be mired in this never-ending war in the first place. So, but of course, there's this risk and drawback where by doing this, it can also harden the Ukrainian resistance and the public narrative and public sentiment, but we have seen how there's no other power apart from the US who can again sustain, or who can again use different tools and platforms to push both sides to come to this, at least on a compromise deal, leading up to the complexity of the territorial integrity and in terms of that issue. But apart from that, for this second round of talks, we can only see that we can only expect some marginal gains in terms of on other areas, but not really on the deals on the territories involved. So as I've stated, Russia still has the capacity to do that, to drag this war further on. But Ukraine will be the one who will be suffering on the other side if it continues to leverage on this pretext of using the public sentiments and mood of hardening nationalist measures, and to avoid any kind of talks whatsoever with regards to the Ukrainian territories. And if this is true, then of course we will see a continued protracted war, and this has been this has entered the fourth year now. And we have to remember that without President Trump's persistence, this will have even gotten worse. And hopefully for this few round of talks, we can see some breakthroughs, at least initially.
Thank you so much, Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin held a video call highlighting the deepening ties between their nations. The call comes just days before the 4th anniversary of Russia's war in Ukraine. Putin described the Moscow-Beijing relationship as stabilizing factor amid global turbulence, praising their energy and trade partnership. Xi called for a grand plan to further strengthen bilateral relations and said the partnership is moving in the right direction. The two countries have positioned themselves as strategic allies, especially since Russia's war in Ukraine, with China emerging as an economic lifeline. No mention of Ukraine was made during the call, but both leaders continue to coordinate on broader global security and economic issues. Let's listen in to what Russian President Vladimir Putin had to say.
Что же касается международной обстановки, то в условиях нарастающей турбулентности в мире внешнеполитическая связка Москвы и Пекина остается важным стабилизирующим фактором. Готовы продолжать самую тесную координацию по глобальным и региональным сюжетам как на двустороннем треке, так и на всех многосторонних площадках в ООН, БРИКС, Шанхайской организации сотрудничества и других.
Pope Leo has warned of the risk of a new arms race as the New START nuclear treaty between the US and Russia is set to expire. In his weekly address, the Pope urged for efforts to prevent the breakdown of nuclear restrictions, stressing that this could escalate tensions and threaten global peace. The treaty, signed in 2010, has imposed limits on the nuclear arsenals of both nations, but has faced setbacks, including Russia's suspension of inspections. Despite Moscow's offer to extend the treaty, talks have stalled amid rising tensions over the Ukraine war. The Pope emphasised that the need for a shared ethic of peace and trust, warning that abandoning the treaty could further escalate global instability. Let's listen in.
Domani giunge a scadenza il trattato New Start, sottoscritto nel 2010 dai Presidenti degli Stati Uniti e della Federazione Russa, che ha rappresentato un passo significativo nel contenere la proliferazione delle armi nucleari, nel rinnovare l'incoraggiamento a ogni sforzo costruttivo in favore del disarmo e della fiducia reciproca. Rivolgo un pressante invito a non lasciare cadere questo strumento senza cercare di garantirgli un seguito concreto e efficace. La situazione attuale esige di fare tutto il possibile per scongiurare una nuova corsa agli armamenti che minaccia ulteriormente la pace tra le nazioni.
That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.